Good morning, world. Welcome to another episode of Zendependently Minded. If you are a new or returning listener, I hope you enjoy this episode. If you're interested in more content like this and podcasts in the future, stay tuned because it's only going to get better from here. The world is in our hands. Let's do something with it. Welcome back, or welcome to Zendependently Minded. On this episode of Movie Minded, I'm going to talk about my personal picks for 5 greatest actors of all time. So, starting off with this list, I actually have an actor that's still active and doing movies right now. It's Leonardo DiCaprio. So, for this list, I'm just going to break down the 5 greatest actors, and in my opinion, their best movie and their worst movie. And for Leonardo DiCaprio, I decided his best movie was The Departed, or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's kind of a tie. I think his performances in most of his movies are great, and he's always the shining star in the movies. Even in Romeo and Juliet, his version of it, that's the worst movie of all time in my opinion, but he still acted his butt off in it. But The Departed, I rewatched it about a week ago. It's just a great film. It's one of the best films ever made, but his acting performance in that, and then more recently in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think are his best performances. And as far as the worst movie he was in, Romeo and Juliet definitely takes the cake for that one. But moving on to the 4th best actor of all time, in my opinion, I picked Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood has made a lot of good movies, a lot of old westerns. I'm going to admit that I haven't seen because I'm not into westerns too much, but I think his best movie is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and I think most people would agree with me on that. And I'm not too sure what his worst movie would be. I haven't seen any movie that he was in that was horrible, so I couldn't really think, but even his movies where he directed, like The Mule, Gran Torino, those are all great movies as well. But that being said, Clint Eastwood is my 4th pick. Best movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and worst, I'm not sure. So, my 3rd pick for best actors of all time is Harrison Ford. And in my personal opinion, I think that his best performance was in The Empire Strikes Back, because it was such a unique character that he was playing, and the role he had to play was odd, but he pulled it off, and he portrayed one of the most iconic characters in movie history, especially within the science fiction and fantasy genre. But I think that his worst performance is going to be Cowboys and Aliens, that was the worst movie he was in, not his worst performance. That movie was awful. I could do a whole Movie Minder review on why that movie was bad, but number 3, Harrison Ford, 3rd best actor of all time. So for my 2nd pick, I picked Jack Nicholson, and once again, I think his best movie is The Departed. That's the best movie he was in. That was his best performance, and he really stole the show in that movie. There were when it comes to acting and actors with males, there were a lot of alpha males, a lot of star power in The Departed. You had Martin Sheen, you had Leonardo DiCaprio, you had Mark Wahlberg, Matt Damon, all great stars and actors in one movie, and it was just a very star-oriented cast when it came to the main characters and a couple side characters in that movie, but Jack Nicholson really stole the show with his performance in that movie. That's why he's my 2nd pick. And for worst movies, I picked Mars Attacks. I didn't like that movie. I know that it's kind of like a cult classic for being bad, but I thought that movie was awful, and that's the worst movie he was in. And so for number 1, greatest actor of all time, I am 99% sure he is the one who influenced all the other actors on this list, with the exception of Clint Eastwood, because they kind of came up around the same time, and I think Clint Eastwood was making movies even before, but Marlon Brando, he is hands down the greatest actor of all time. If you ask anybody else to give their greatest actors list, they're going to name off Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Joe Pesci, people like that. But those are all actors that were influenced and completely changed their whole acting career and their acting style, the genre they like to act in and star in, all was influenced by Marlon Brando. And Marlon Brando, you can say what you want about his politics and his personal beliefs on stuff like that, but as an actor, he completely changed the acting industry as a whole. And there are still people who look back and use his techniques, and they practice it to try to mimic his style because he was such a phenomenal actor. And he was an interesting character because he was kind of a recluse. He didn't really like to go out, and he didn't like to talk to the press that much, and he didn't even particularly like acting in some points of his life, but he was very good at it. Definitely his best performance and the best movie he was in, and one of the greatest movies of all time, is The Godfather. A lot of people will say The Godfather 2 is better than Godfather 1, but I personally think the first Godfather is the best because of Marlon Brando. Even though he was only alive, his character was alive for half of the movie, he's just every second that he's on the movie, he keeps your eye on him, and there's just some of the best acting moments are in The Godfather with Marlon Brando. And I think The Godfather and Apocalypse Now are his two best movies, and I think the worst movie that he was in and his worst performance was Superman Returns, because nobody asked for that movie, but we got it. Unfortunately, that's going to tarnish his acting history, but nonetheless, Marlon Brando is definitely the greatest actor of all time. He's influenced countless numbers of classic actors that some people will consider the greatest actors of all time. So that's going to conclude my movie-minded number 3, greatest actors of all time. Let me know what you guys think on who your personal picks are for best actors. And coming in the near future, I'm going to do my personal pick of greatest directors of all time, top 5, and then I'm going to do top 5 greatest actresses of all time. So stay tuned, and don't forget, the world is in our hands. Let's do something with it.